welcome to Sunrise Extra on a Thursday. Thanks for joining us. We are talking today about ways to tackle Portland's rising gun violence problem. And really, this is happening in a lot of cities across the U.S. Joe Biden going to be announcing some ideas of his own later today as well. But yesterday, the Portland City Council met on their regular Wednesday meeting, and they unanimously approved a $6 million plan. And it's extremely unconventional for what we have seen, before. And so $0 for the first time probably ever is going to Portland police. They are getting no extra money in this situation. And about a little over $1 million is going toward hiring unarmed park rangers to be patrolling around the clock in city parks, watching for things, just trying to have a presence in city parks since, some of the violence could be starting there or happening in parks or in neighborhoods. Most of that $6 million is going toward community groups that really kind of are trying to get to the root of this problem and reach neighborhoods and kids that may be apt to join gangs or, kind of foster change in neighborhoods. And so it's really a community-based approach. And we launched a poll this morning on Twitter asking, what do you guys think of this plan and doing a more community-based approach versus, the traditional thing of, okay, let's hire more police or whatever. And overwhelmingly, you guys said this was a bad idea. And I really appreciate the people who gave some great thoughts while they voted. And I'm going to try and pull up a few of those.
Should we set the stage a little more? Mike Benner also did a package.
Yeah.
He did a more in-depth story, talk to folks. Let's run that, and then on the backside, we'll listen to your comments.
Okay.
Since the start of 2021, there have been more than 250 shootings in Portland. That compares to 111 through the first few months of 2020. Portland's police chief will tell you this about stopping gun violence.
We know this work is important. It's probably some of the most important work we do because it really affects people's lives and safety every day.
Portland's city council agrees. On Wednesday, it unanimously approved a $6 million plan aimed at tackling the spike in gun violence. Not a penny of it goes to the Portland Police Bureau. Instead, a little more than $4 million will be earmarked for community groups like the Latino Network that work in neighborhoods hardest hit by gunfire.
That's the big corner we turned today, from one where the community is at the recipient end of policing and safety issues to one where the community is now in the driver's seat.
Another $1.4 million will go towards the hiring of a couple dozen unarmed park rangers for around-the-clock foot patrols.
They're there to serve more as ambassadors, but I think they could serve as a deterrent, and I think there's room for their participation.
We didn't see the kind of gun violence in Portland when I was growing up.
Randy Philbrick is the founder of Portland for Positive Impact, a newer coalition of community groups and neighborhood associations tired of the violence. Philbrick questions the city council's plan, specifically the part involving park rangers.
My personal feeling is this is what happens when you have public safety policy being created by people who have zero public safety experience.
Say what you will, but city commissioners and Mayor Ted Wheeler believe this plan will help quell the gun violence across the city.
This ordinance significantly increases funding for community-based organizations that can help us with deterrence, with intervention.
How well this all meshes with what the Portland Police Bureau is already doing is unclear. What is clear is this.
We have to figure out a way where we can be effective in playing our part, be a good partner.
In addition to this newly approved plan, the Portland City Council is asking the Portland Police Bureau to shake things up so that more people are responding to shooting scenes and shooting investigations. This is on top of the enhanced community safety team that was established earlier this year.
Okay, so that is a little bit more information on this. In addition, which may kind of help you think about things more. So they didn't give any money to police, yet they did ask Portland Police to allocate more officers to shootings and those shooting investigations. But they were also defunded $22 million last year, and we just had the story that dozens of officers have quit or retired. in the past year. So to spur thought, here are some people writing to us on Twitter. Bill said, and I thought this was very well said, the devil is in the details. Lots of plans sound good and reasonable until you get down to just how all this works. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how this unfolds. Other people saying, what is an unarmed park ranger going to do about someone with a gun? Honestly, this is worse than doing nothing. That from Deborah. And Lynn says, how long of a trial period will this program get? What kind of training will the park rangers get? When will they see that this program doesn't work? Will the city give the remainder of the money back to reinvest or recreate the gun violence reduction team? What the city needs is a strong, efficient, effective police force. Do we have a couple more? This person writing in on our text line, you can always text us your comments, 503-226-5088, says, good idea. Any plus idea is better than doing nothing. And one last one from Kelly. We had a plan. It was the gun violence reduction team, and they dismantled it. So now the increase in violence is the result.
So I'm just going to play devil's advocate here for a quick second, because the gun violence reduction team, the people who were opposed to it, they say that it disproportionately targeted people of color, and that's why it kind of became a controversial thing to begin with. I think also the viewer who said the devil are in the details, spot on.
Yeah.
Because if I was just a casual viewer of this, I would say, what do you mean? Like park rangers are going to be out there confronting people with guns? And I was reading many different reports online, including one from Oregon Public Broadcasting, and they were quoting the city and Carmen Rubio's office, the commissioner in charge of parks. And she said what the police chief said, that these park rangers are going to be, they call them goodwill ambassadors, but basically eyes on the ground in surrounding neighborhoods and city parks. And what's more, instead of like doing, hand-to-hand combat, as you know, you might assume, or incorrectly, it says that it would also charge these rangers with developing what they're calling a restorative justice program that would be run through a completely different office called the Code Hearings Office. I don't even know what that is. But instead of going through Multnomah County courts, it would take these incidents and this restorative justice program and kind of set it on a different track. So I think the bigger issue for our community, because what we're doing right now is not working. I've lived here since I was 8. I've never seen stuff like this happen before. It is insane. So whatever we've been doing and whatever the new dynamics are that are changing all this gun violence, it's not working. We need to figure out what is, and we need to give it a deep dive, because, popping off here and there about, this won't work or this will, we've got to really dig in, and I'm hopeful that the people in charge will do that.
You brought up why the gun violence reduction team was eliminated, and there are definitely reasons for that. It is hard, right, though, to just look at the raw data and see like when that was dismantled and how many shootings we've had in the city since that time, right? I mean, we just put those facts on the table, and anyone who looks at it goes, man, is that what we're missing? Maybe it needs to be reformed another way so that it meets the needs of all people, but it does seem, pretty evident. This item went away, and the number of shootings have gone up like this.
There are so many factors, though, right? I mean, so this happened last year. It's during a COVID pandemic when the nation was, at a record unemployment rate. People are scared, they're upset, they have no, money. There's runs at the grocery store on all kinds of things. There's this George Floyd, the trial is happening right now, and that remains to be seen in a couple weeks. Like, what is going to happen, and what is the nation's reaction to that, whatever the verdict is going to be. And and it is not just Portland, so it's not just Portland's gun violence team that is could be leading. I mean, I think that's definitely a factor for sure, but other cities are seeing this same problem, and I think it's police. Man, it has got to be hard to be a police officer.
I can't even imagine.
Right?
Mad respect for
and so they're like,
all the really
listen,
good ones.
I'm getting into a different industry. I don't need this kind of stress on my life or people hating on me, if I've been a good officer. So I get it, or you're retiring early, go do something else. And so there are no, I say that, in blanket statement, but there are very few officers. And then to take their money away, have them take this team away and then say, oh, well, you guys need to find more officers to go on shootings. It's just like, it doesn't make sense.
This is
in
kind
that
of
vein to
a
me.
parallel thing, but I think it gives a tiny bit of insight, a little bit off topic. But when I was working down at the square, Pioneer Courthouse Square, our studio there in Portland's living room, and this was before all the craziness this last time with the pandemic. But there were some elements down there that were scary for me as a single woman walking around there in the morning. And we had, kind of the rent-a-cop thing where they were private security.
Guard,
They certainly were not armed. And I remember talking to one of the Central Precinct commanders at the time. And I said, I don't feel safe. And he said, look, I know that they're not armed police officers, but I am telling you that just having somebody in uniform in this area decreases the likelihood that a crime will occur. They will go somewhere else. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, I trust that. You've been on the job for a long time, and that was his opinion, and he was a police officer.
I believe that to be true, absolutely. It doesn't mean it's going to prevent it 100%, but I would absolutely agree. I felt better knowing that you had at least someone walking with you. I don't care who they were, right? Than you walking by yourself.
But I think we could extrapolate that to anything, any area of the city. Like you said, not the silver
Just
bullet,
eyes,
not
extra
gonna-
eyes always helps, yeah.
Exactly.
Because they've got, maybe they have a radio or they, certainly just another person able to call 911 or document something or be a witness in a neighborhood.
You know what? Director Brian is just telling me earlier Maggie Vespa talked to one of the park rangers about this very thing. He had some really interesting takes on it. Let's listen to that.
Park rangers are ambassadors, and they engage with community members. They're solution-based. They have the authority to issue warnings, citations, but their job description is not dealing with gun violence and or gang violence.
So it sounds like in that, he's against it?
Yes.
Okay.
He thought it was just ridiculous. I remember seeing her story. It, in a way, the other thought I had is it kind of seems to me like the whole gun debate about how we're going to stop shootings in schools, arm the teachers. And it's like, wait, I'm an educator. I'm not down with that. So you've had a really variety of opinions on that, and now they're talking about not arming the park rangers, they're unarmed, but you kind of put them in a spot. It all seems very difficult and complicated.
The whole idea behind Sunrise Extra is to hear from the viewers as well, and we do have one more viewer comment we can share. I know this one just got into the newsroom, and one of our producers, Jessica Smith, said, hey, you got to read this one. This was pretty good. I think the plan, this viewer says, and this was texted to us, I believe, I think the plan to work in communities is good, but why would they bring in park rangers that are not armed? Park rangers already have enough work to do. Besides, parks are not in the communities that usually have the violence problems that we're seeing. So this viewer, for one, says, bad idea. It's obviously it's a tough problem. We're talking about the police as well. And I keep thinking when we talk about this, Brenda and Nina, an officer that we lost several years back, but I know that you guys remember the name, I'm sure, Mark Zalawi. They called him the Z-Man, and they put a scholarship in his name together about 10 years ago. But what Mark Zalawi was known for was to get into some of these communities where we saw high rates of crime, and he got to know the people that live there. And when he showed up in that neighborhood in his patrol car, it wasn't like, oh, here come the cops. It was, oh, here comes Z-Man. He befriended people in these communities that saw a lot of crime. And I know that could be part of the solution. They want that to be part of the solution, where police are getting back into the community and establishing relationships that can hopefully prevent some of these crimes, days, weeks, months, years before they actually happen.
That would be nice if they had officers to do that.
And
but now they have so few officers that, they're literally can only respond to happening now calls. That's what they've said. They don't have the personnel to just kind of be able to, and that's their reasoning for doing this, is getting those community groups who, are not police, don't have that kind of persona. And I know we've talked to certain people, and I think it's even been on Sunrise Extra, where they were former gang members, or they were living a certain life and changed their life, and now they're kind of counseling and talking to younger people who are in this, and trying to pull them out of it and to kind of see, hey, life is more than being involved with these groups or the friends that you have right now. So, I mean, I think that is definitely worth it, community groups. But I feel like, yeah, you need that community policing, and we just don't have now the money or officers to do that.
Jeff Lucas, one of our regulars, good morning to you. He says, I can't think of a solution, and I don't think the council knows either. I don't feel it's right to criticize this decision without knowing the details or having my own answers. So that is his take. Rod Beck says, I think it's insane. Mm-hmm. How much are they going to pay these sacrificial lambs to put themselves in harm's way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, signing up for that job, no thank you, right? That would not be the job for me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Jennifer Taft, did you see this? She said Spokane is running billboards in Portland to hire our cops.
Yeah.
No joke.
Yeah, they have to, I think we did a story on that. I saw it in our listing. But yeah, and we did a rundown of, I think it was us, I read it somewhere, of the cities, smaller cities, like Spokane and Boise and Bend are hiring away officers from Portland Police, I mean, just a little smaller town, your benefits are good, money is still good, and you don't have, this kind of spotlight and pressure like you do here in the city.
It's an overwhelming topic, and when I started to think about this topic and how big it is, how none of us have an answer, right? We keep coming up with ways that maybe it could work, or the start of the solution, but certainly not something that we know will absolutely solve what has become a huge problem in Portland, gun violence. And then I think, let's stop thinking about that for a moment. Let's think about the other problems. And then you've got the trash problem right now. You've got the homeless problem. I mean, there are so many what we would call crises happening all at once. And I know that that's what the city leaders are there to do. Address these problems, figure them out, bring some viable solutions to the table, and I'm not letting them off the hook by any means. But I also know, my goodness, where do you want to start today? There are so many of these problems that have...
But we've kicked the can down the road for years and years and years and years. That's the culmination of what we're seeing, right? The perfect storm of the pandemic and other things that have happened. But this has been a problem for a long time, and we've not ever been able to get a handle on it. And so it just builds and builds. It's kind of like the snowball rolling downhill. I mean, I'm not super surprised.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, now I understand it, having lived through it for a year, and I know all the psychological effects of living through the pandemic. And we have it relatively easy. We got to come to work every day since it started, right? So we're super fortunate and super lucky, and not many people, or there are a lot of people who can't say that. But when it all started, I think I would have said, hey, we're in lockdown, businesses are shut down, people aren't going out as much anymore. I actually thought there would have been a reduction in some of these numbers. I guess that was totally naive of me to think that way 12 months ago. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I would have, maybe during a pandemic when things are supposed to be shut down and businesses are closed for as long as they were, we would actually have seen a
I thought the opposite
in these numbers.
I remember, like, last March, we were sitting out on the porch because, everything had just shut down. And then you start to think, like, okay, people are getting laid off. That means they're not going to have a paycheck in 2 weeks. That means, like, things are going to get, you need to buy food and the toilet paper, desperate times. And I mean, I was like scared to go to the grocery store, of like someone's going to pull a gun at the grocery store to like grab the last thing off the shelf. I mean, I was like really like, man, this could be bad, pulling things off the shelf, apocalyptic style. Thank God, it never came to that. But yeah, I was really like actually scared about violence and stuff like that.
I really do hope that this gets a chance to draw in those community members and the advocates who've been working in these communities that are really affected by the gun violence. Because where I live, where you live, where Drew lives, we're not seeing people shooting each other, right?
Well,
for a variety of reasons. You do, but it's not necessarily
within like 20 blocks.
Yeah, well, exactly. Some people live right in the neighborhood, like not 20 blocks away. Yeah. And I do think it's important, the people who are impacted by it, to get in on the conversation instead of, I'm going to say us as in, maybe the city council saying we should do this. They've got to get in more people who are actually in that community living day to day, and the people who for years and years have been advocating for those communities to get in and say what works. you know, again, what we're doing now doesn't work. So if this doesn't work, it'll be, you know, just another thing. But we have got to start trying something.
Mm-hmm. Should we end with that, Brenda? Because I think that's a good way to end it. And I know we're up against the clock as I look down at it here on a Thursday. So with that, we say goodbye. We hope you join us for tomorrow's edition of Sunrise Extra. It's a Friday edition, so we're hoping it feels good.
That's pretty. Look at that.
Great ending shot there. Thank you, Brian Matthews, from the coast. Again, thanks for watching today's Sunrise Extra.